Good morning. I'm Sharon Jaffe Dan, Editor-in-Chief of Home and Design Magazine. Thanks for joining us today and happy fall. I'm not sure how we've suddenly found ourselves in mid-November with Thanksgiving around the corner. Over the weekend, I was excavating my closet for signs of life after wearing what is probably, let's call them yoga pants, for about 2 years, and I came across my favorite pair of old leather boots. They were definitely a splurge when I bought them back in the day. And even though they're no longer in vogue, their leather is more luxurious and their construction sturdier than new boots today. I don't mean to rant about footwear, but it occurred to me that, like my boots, the well-loved home on the cover of our November-December issue, coming to your mailbox and newsstand soon, was beautifully designed and very much in style in its day. Though its owners were ready for a change after 20 years, they wanted to retain its graceful proportions and solid framework while casting it in a new light. This is a common refrain we hear as homeowners today challenge design pros to streamline, brighten, and reimagine their current houses while preserving the features they love. Our guests today are certainly experts on the topic. They'll discuss it and also tell us more about how this dramatic DC makeover took shape. First, some introductions. Principal of his eponymous Baltimore firm, Patrick Sutton brings a unique storytelling approach to his interior design work. Patrick came to this process after a childhood spent tagging along with his travel journalist father, touring the most beautiful destinations on Earth. His distinctive approach has earned him numerous awards and commissions across the country, including Baltimore's Sagamore Pendry Hotel. Good morning, Patrick.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Welcome. Good to see you.
Yeah.
Mark Sanders earned a BA in architecture at the New York Institute of Technology. Since then, he has spent 35 years in the construction industry, including 23 years at Pyramid Builders, where he now serves as Chief Operating Officer. Mark and the Pyramid team collaborate with many of our region's top architects, interior designers, and landscape architects to build and renovate one-of-a-kind homes. Welcome, Mark.
Good morning, Sharon. Good morning, Patrick.
Morning.
Good to see you guys.
Thank you for having me.
So I know that like the home that we'll be discussing today, both of you have been very busy dealing with and designing a lot of beautiful renovations. Do you think, why do you think that's a trend now? And do you think it's even more so in COVID?
You want me to go first?
Sure.
So it's interesting, Sharon, when the pandemic hit, I was on vacation out of the country and came back and made a few phone calls to my colleagues around the country and was worried that we needed to start scaling back. Mm-hmm. I could not have been more wrong. As as the pandemic sort of pushed everybody inside their homes, people started realizing the value of the sanctuary of their own personal space and started to rethink how important their homes were in their lives. Mm-hmm. And as such, you started to see a lot of people either moving or rethinking their existing houses. And with moving, you saw a lot of renovations. And I think the term that I keep hearing the most is sanctuary. Mm-hmm. And I think that's probably caused this boom in our industry.
Mm-hmm. Have you had a similar experience, Mark?
We have. We've seen the same type of things where people really are valuing their time spent at home and want to spend more time there, want to enjoy their home. So we're doing quite a bit more renovation work. Mm-hmm. We've also seen a trend recently, having done this for a number of years, where homes we originally built for clients are being sold, and we're able to renovate homes for new clients, which is really exciting. We really feel a sense of ownership in the homes we've built, and we really enjoy the opportunity to renovate a home for a new family, bring new life to the home and stay attached to that project.
Right. That's great. Well, I'm going to share my screen so we can start our conversation about this particular DC home. This is our November-December cover, and this project was originally designed by Washington architect Jerry Harpole somewhere around 20 years ago. This is the opener of our beautiful story. The article was written by Susan Boddicker and the photos are by Richard Powers. So thanks to Susan and Richard for sharing their talents with us. Here are some before shots of the home. And we see the kitchen, living room, and dining room and a hallway. Patrick, what was your first impression of the home? What were its strong points and what potential did you see as you embarked on the project?
Well, when I first was called to go over to the house, the first thing that struck me was that it was, albeit maybe from a decorating standpoint, a little tired. The bones of the building were spectacular. I mean, you could tell that this owner, when they originally built the house, had put a lot of care and love into the proportions and the architecture and the material selections. I was just, you know, I just couldn't wait to actually to get started because you could see so much potential, but you know, it kind of just felt like you just needed to open all the windows and air it out a little bit. Mm-hmm. So you know, that was my impression. It's like, wow, I can't. This is a gem, you know, hiding in the rough.
Right, beautiful tall ceilings. How tall are most of the ceilings on the main level?
They're at least 10 feet plus. Mm-hmm. Some of them are even taller. Mm-hmm. But it's not just the ceilings, the proportions and the details of some of the, you know, the millwork and the beautiful, you know, waxed walnut doors. I mean, just beautiful. Some of the stuff, some of the materials you could tell were sourced from Europe. It's just beautiful building. Right. It just needed a new attitude.
Right. Mark, what was your impression and how did you and your team assess the structure in terms of what, if anything, needed to be remedied?
We felt the same as Patrick. I mean, this was a terrific home that just needed updating and just needed to be lightened up. Jerry Harpole did a great job in the original design. And like Patrick said, the bones were terrific. From a structural point, there was really nothing we had to address. The house is built like a fortress and didn't present any structural issues. The one challenge we had is just logistically working through the renovations, the fact that all of the floors are poured concrete slabs. So from a logistical point of view, we had to work out pathways for new electric, new plumbing, new HVAC, which we worked through. But other than that, the house was in phenomenal shape and held up very well throughout the construction.
Right. So Patrick, as you got busy and I'm sure through a lot of meetings with your clients, maybe you can share the process with us and sort of how the new aesthetic evolved and how we see that played out here in the beautiful living room.
Sure. Well, I mean, I think that like every project we go through, the number one thing that we do at the outset of the project is listen. Right, because you know the vision for the house, all the houses that we do really come from the client, and you know this particular client had raised 3 children in this, you know, what I would refer to as a really deeply feathered, comfortable nest. I mean, like what I walked into looked like a very, very cozy, comfortable place. But now all those kids had grown up and moved out of the house, and it was just the couple. And I think that they were, after many conversations and sharing of pictures of things that they liked, discussions about places that they traveled and what they were seeking, you could kind of get a sense that this was a time where they wanted to move into the next chapter of their lives, which was really more about decluttering, simplify, modernizing, and like sort of, as I said earlier, just opening up the windows and getting a breath of fresh air into the house. You know, people, they loved their house, so they weren't going to move. So it's just a question of reinventing what they had. And so that's how we started. And we, you know, there were some misses, of course. The first layout I did for this room that you're looking at was met with a unmitigated no, which is great because from that you get a sense of like what you need to look at, right? And we finally got there, and there was a fair amount of invention that took place. So that's how the process really started and how it progressed. And you know, the process, it's not necessarily a linear process, right? When you start designing these projects, it's discovery for both us and for the client, right? They learn more about their tastes as well. So it's always an ongoing exploration as you move through the design process room by room.
And Mark, what are some of the materials in this room that were existing, and what did your team work on in the living room?
In the living room, again, it was really about lightening up the room. There was an existing trim band around the top of the ceiling that kind of capped the room, kind of shortening it, compressing the space. We eliminated that band so that the walls flow into the ceiling.
Mm-hmm.
We also introduced, as per Patrick's design, kind of a reglet detail, which replaces a traditional trail rail that allows us to differentiate between the materials at the top and the bottom.
Mm-hmm.
We'd fabricated and finished that reglet detail in our shop and then installed it in place. The wood floorings were refinished on site. They were existing, but we brought in the original consultants that worked with the clients when the floors were installed 30 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
just to understand the stain mixture, the formulas, to make sure we were matching. So we were kind of working with a lot of the existing materials, but it was bringing those back up to date. We did introduce all new lighting in this space. So the entire ceiling was gutted. We installed new lighting, new drywall, then we prepped those areas for finishing.
Mm-hmm. The dining room is also a beautiful example of new and old, and working with some incredible materials. Patrick, how did this space evolve? And tell us about the mood you were trying to create in the dining room.
I think the mood here was pretty much consistent with the attitude for the whole house, which is just brighten it and make it happier, right? It's hard to tell from the photo on the bottom right, but when we walked into the project, those beams were all dark wood. So were the windows. And I think our approach was to, we work hand in glove with Baltimore Art Star, who's a faux finishing company who I've worked with for 2 decades now. And we do a lot of our R&D together. And I think the thought here was to sort of embrace some of the limestone colors that were there. So we actually worked with Kelly Walker to faux finish the ceiling so that it had the coloration of the limestone. We picked drapes that were the color of the limestone. So it just sort of brightened the whole attitude of the room a little bit, so that it just felt a little bit more today.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's beautiful. Mark, did your teams address a lot in the dining room?
In the dining room, most of our time was spent really preparing the area for Kelly Walker to come in and do the faux finishing. So we were applying primer coats, base coats, cleaning up the trim,
Mm-hmm.
really prepping those spaces for her to come in and finish those items.
Mm-hmm.
Same with the walls, prepping for wallpaper. We did introduce new electrical and redid the doors into the space as part of the part of our work, largely cosmetic though in this space.
Right. I love the elegance of this foyer. And I think a lot of that has to do with the materials and the finishes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I'll say that, here we were gifted this gorgeous staircase to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
So, job number one is don't screw it up. So I think what we did here is just selective editing throughout the entire house. We again worked with our faux finisher to develop, really beautiful but serene and subtle plaster wall finishes. This is a marmerino on the walls, if I'm not mistaken. I think before it was a little bit more heavy Provençal, ochre colored. And then we decided to paint the grand window black, sort of to pull your eye out and tie in a little bit with the railing and some of the artwork. So I think really here it's just sort of just softening everything and working with materiality in a way that just made it feel more serene and a little bit more modern, while still having some gravitas to the finish, as opposed to, say, painted drywall.
Absolutely. Well, big shout out to Kelly and her team. So Kelly Walker of Art Star Custom Paintworks in Baltimore, unfortunately couldn't join us today, but they really had their hand in, I think, every space that we featured in the issue. So here are some examples of her team at work. These, as Patrick mentioned, were very dark wood, and they applied a decorative treatment to make them match the limestone. This, I believe, is in the living room, right?
Yep.
And here's the family room, where we'll get to that. But Mark, how do you think their finishes kind of elevated the feel of the house?
Oh, we've enjoyed working with Kelly Walker and her team for a number of years as well, and they make a dramatic difference to the spaces. Like Patrick said, we're taking drywall spaces and really adding a subtle layer. There's depth to the walls. For us, it makes a major difference for these spaces. And our role in this process is to provide her with a good medium with which to work from. So we're making sure the drywall is finished to a level 5, which means we're skimming all of the surfaces to remove any irregularities. We're prepping any of the wood trim that's being faux finished. We're working with Kelly to understand the color tint she wants for the primers. And our goal is to give her really the best platform with which she can work with to achieve the results which she does, which are typically very stunning and very much so in this project.
Right. Yeah, we can point out some of her work as we move ahead. I love this atrium space, which brings light, and it just seems like it's a wonderful connector between the rooms and the indoor and outdoor. Patrick, walk us through this room and what your approach was here, how you updated it.
Yeah, it's a shame we don't have a before picture here, but this atrium space is right off the dining room. That earlier shot that you showed with those sort of sliding steel and glass doors actually was taken from this space. So if you sort of think of that dining room connects to this space, and it really is used as twofold. One is it allows them during holidays to open those steel and glass doors up and expand the dining room into this space. And so it is this interstitial space when not being expanded into a dining room. It is an interstitial space between the family room, the living room, the hall. It's pretty much the nexus of the house. Mm-hmm. It also opens up onto that rear terrace, as you can see. It did pose some challenges to us. We were like, well, are we putting plants around the corner? What are we doing? And ultimately, we landed on this idea that we were going to make this conservatory table, which you see in front of you, something that we designed custom and had Gutierrez Studios make for us. And what's kind of fun about it is instead of trying to just have the center of the room be vacant and having sort of plants plastered around the perimeter, we really leaned into it and made the plants in the middle and designed this table on these heavy casters so it can be rolled out of the way for holidays. And then the other thing that we did is, like, pretty much the story of the whole house, we just edited out a lot of the heavy trim, simplified the finishes. The wall finish in here was a very, very rustic stucco. Mm-hmm. So we just slimmed it down, trimmed it down to something that still had some quality to it, a plaster finish, again with ArtStar, but just modernized it a little bit, tucked some lighting into the skylight itself, and now it's it's as you see it.
Right, I love it, and I've been working with these photos a lot as we've edited and produced the issue, and I just noticed the casters, which I think are so cool.
Yeah.
So that table can serve on many functions as they move it around too.
Yeah, that's a lot of weight.
Yeah. Yeah.
As Mark is aware.
I am aware of the weight, yes. So the table itself is heavy, then the plants are quite heavy as well. So
right. We haven't, go ahead, Mark.
I was just saying, but like Patrick said, that's a great space where it's been lightened up. I mean, we redid a number of the panels up at the upper cornice level, introduced new crown molding that was finished by Kelly, and then very subtle lighting in some of the coves and alcoves, just to create soft lighting in that space. So again, I think a very successful transformation of the conservatory.
Very cool.
Someone just asked the question what type of flooring that is, and it's a timely question because that's what's called pillowed limestone, where there's an edge profile on each one of the edges of those things, which you can imagine makes rolling something across it, especially something heavy, very, very difficult, which is why we ended up with those big, inflatable rubber tires on there.
Right. We haven't really talked much about the color palette, but how did that come about, Patrick? And how did you, it seems like it's beautifully woven throughout all of the new spaces.
Yeah, I think that the palette was, first, I mean, it's probably something that I lean to personally. It's just, there's a lot of serenity to the color palette, but you sort of take what's you're given. So if, for example, if you look at this room, we invented that wall finish with ArtStar. So we took that palette of the the fireplace, the marble that was there, and tried to create a 2-color ombre. And ombre, for those that don't know, just means it sort of gradients from dark to light as you move up the wall. So we picked a color palette of that sort of lilac and rose, creating that reglet around the room, so that fireplace color sort of bands around the room to a certain level, and then the lilac just sort of goes from lilac almost to white as you go up into the ceiling.
Mhm.
And then the other palette, I mean, again, the room that we were just looking at in the conservatory, there were 2 things that were already there, right? There was, I think the other way, right? Yeah, there you go. There was the limestone, and then there was this bronze bas-relief sculpture on the walls. And we just borrowed those 2 colors and said, let's just run with these.
Mhm.
So that's, sometimes it's just take what you're given and don't screw it up. And the
Right.
the doors are beautiful. So why not make them the show?
Exactly. And is this material wood?
That is wood, yes. It's wood that we had, it's MDF plywood with applied panel molding that we again painted, primed, and basically turned that over to Kelly Walker then to achieve the final coloration that we're seeing that, like Patrick says, matches the relief on the wall there. So,
Right. Yeah, it almost looks like a metallic
yeah,
panel.
many samples to get to that color. So again, working very closely together to get that right outcome.
Right. And now we are going to the kitchen, which really changed. I think the original kitchen really epitomized the French country style. And the new kitchen is probably one of the more modern spaces in the house and beautifully designed.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I mean, I think we literally left the functionality where it was and just reimagined the finishes and the design. That's a custom kitchen, which we designed, and then had a Duncan cabinetry make for us. Those countertops, it's interesting. They had worked in that kitchen for 20 years with lava stone, which was in an ochre color. You can't tell from the black and white photograph in the bottom right, but the kitchen was so distinctly Provençal, but they loved the fact that lava stone top just never chipped, dinged, or did anything. So we went back to it and had lava stone tops remade in that sort of bluish gray.
You mean the island top?
The island top, yep. Thank you. Yeah.
Wow.
But you can see the ceiling beams are still the same ones that were there before. And then we just, we put that beautiful blue-gray Philip Jeffries wall covering up on the ceiling to sort of express the beams a little bit. We added some marble trim around the windows, and just, got rid of the window coverings to lighten it up a little bit. And yeah, and then, like, for example, that tile behind the hood there is just there was tile there before, but this is just a modern invention, right? Modern interpretation of what was there before and a more modern expression.
Is that a slab?
No, that's tiny little mosaics that are little slivers of glass enamel, and that just sort of create that really sort of subtle, background.
And that was and that was a puzzle basically that our tile setters had to assemble on the floor, kind of mock it up, put it all together, and then be able to install it. But like Patrick said, there were thousands of little pieces that we had to figure out how that all went together and work the way it did.
Right. It looks simple now, right?
It does now, yes, but it was quite a challenge when we received the boxes of tile.
Well, so and Mark will tell you that one of my favorite refrains is, if I made it easy, I wouldn't need you, Mark.
That's why we work so well together, right?
It looks like you changed the floors here.
We did. Yeah. Those are I think that's Turkish limestone from Paris Ceramics. I think it's called Castile Gray, if I'm not mistaken. And they're sort of a large format. They, I think, are 19 inches wide and random length. We did a honed finish on it. It comes in a couple different finishes, but we did a honed finish. So it still has that old world quality. It's still an old world material. So at the same caliber as the rest of the house, but finished in a modern way.
Right. And the cabinets are beautifully too. So are those wood made of
Those
texture.
are, those are Cerussed oak, white oak cabinets with a gray stain base. Again, done by Duncan Cabinetry. I think the hardware on there is Rocky Mountain, if I'm not mistaken. A little bit of a weight to it. And then the custom hood.
Just beautiful.
This was a space, Sharon, that we, one of several spaces in the home that we completely renovated. So this space was stripped down to studs, completely demoed, and then basically refinished. So it's, like Patrick said, it's all new flooring, it's new cabinetry, new countertops, working very closely with the team to work through the detailing at the stone window alcove, where that's all finished in stone with the trim pieces. But this was one of the more transformative rooms in the home where we really did strip it down to bare bones and then refinish the space.
You know, and Sharon, one of the things that we did for the client in this particular case, because it was a relatively complicated space to understand, we actually outsourced a virtual reality rendering of this so they could put goggles on it and actually be in the space. And it really was a remarkable tool for our clients to be able to visualize the space and make whatever changes they want, you know, while it was still virtual. So that's something worth noting.
Very cool. And did you get feedback or changes that they noticed after that experience?
Every time we do a virtual reality, not only do they have changes they want to make, but so do we. So I mean, it's a very powerful tool to be able to really immerse yourself into the design. You know, like wall finishes, and I think originally that wall was a little whiter, and we thought, oh, we really want to pop that gray plaster finish a little bit so that all that marble trim and all that white trim around the windows really, you know, jumped off the surface.
Yeah.
That is something we looked at several different times with different samples and working real hard to get that right outcome.
Yeah, it's just beautiful. So many different textures. I love it. And here we have the beautiful family room, which is so relaxing. I know that a lot of work probably went into the treatments here as well. So I want to hear about it. And also, Patrick, how you, you know, as everyone gets ready for the holidays and entertaining, how you create a sense of welcome in the home to make entertaining easy for the hosts, but also creating a sense of welcome for the guests.
So two different questions. Let's take the first one first. So this room that you're currently looking at, you can see the remnants of the original design in the fireplace, that reclaimed beautiful limestone fireplace, and the wood beams. And I think that, you know, our job there is, you know, find the things that have great character and leave them alone, and then, you know, make the supporting cast a little bit more edited. So you can see that around the fireplace, we upholstered the walls in that beautiful sort of woven linen, just to make it a little cozy, like a cozy little ingle nook. And then we made that sort of refined, that's a Venetian plaster, except it's matte finish everywhere else you see. So I think what happens there is you sort of elevate the rusticity with a modern finish next to it, and it sort of brings them both up. And then the furnishings went very, very modern. The art, which was the client's selection, is more modern. And those things I think happily coexist. And then you have that heroic Holly Hunt sculptural light fixture over the whole thing. So I think that's the way we approach this room. And I will say that the day after we installed it, I was very proud to get a one-word text from my client, which basically showed a picture of this room and just the word "ah."
Oh, that's perfect.
Right?
Just what you wanted to hear.
Exactly.
It made my day, made my week, actually. To your second question, the whole thing about, and I do hospitality projects. The whole issue of hospitality and making people feel comfortable is all about, welcoming. And that usually comes from the client themselves. When you think about great places that you've gone for dinner parties or entertainment venues, you always are made to feel welcome by the host. Our job is to really just support that, make sure that it feels warm, that it feels engaged, and that it reflects our host, that it is actually reflective of their personalities so that they can shine. and then they can make their environment reflect them and have a wonderful, evening for their
Right.
guests.
Well, these spaces certainly indicate that that would be the case. Mark, tell us about how you improved this room, and also what treatments are on the ceiling. I think we also saw photos of Kelly's team working on the ceiling.
Yeah, so again, Kelly finished those spaces. So we were prepping, we've introduced lighting into the space, which doesn't show up in the photos, but there's recessed lighting in the space. It's adding new electrical and then prepping those ceilings and the beams for Kelly Walker. In the room, we've installed new hardwood flooring. So there's oak flooring throughout a fair part of the house that we've installed as new flooring, running through the family room into the hallway and then in the upper level spaces as well. Lastly, we finished the doors, the existing doors to the exterior of the home were finished in place to kind of warm up the finish. They were originally very red in finish and didn't want to replace the doors, but we were able to finish those basically just to warm the tone of them to match the overall feel of the room itself.
Mm-hmm. These are beautiful doors too.
Yes, there are beautiful doors throughout the house. And in many cases, those were existing doors that we basically were refinishing, just again, to add some warmth and contrast to the plaster walls that surround them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, those doors I actually saw a lot of sun bleaching. The other side of those doors is that conservatory.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So you can imagine what 20 years of sun did to them.
Mm-hmm.
So, Mark's team did a great job of bringing them back to life.
Mm-hmm. Just beautiful proportions and scale in all of these rooms.
Which again, we had nothing to do with.
we did have great bones. We had great spaces to work with, and,
mm-hmm.
and that certainly was a big benefit to us as for the whole team, basically, to work with those kind of spaces.
Right.
I mean, the only thing I would say is that we just edited some of the heavier trim down to make it lighter. That's
right.
about it.
Right. And this is another example of this. This is such a serene and restful bedroom.
Mm-hmm.
And Patrick, I know you've designed a lot of hotels. We hear a lot that people come to their designers saying, make my bedroom feel like I'm at a luxury hotel. How do you employ that strategy?
Well, first of all, I think the houses we design are truly meant to reflect the owner. And everybody has different taste, right? So in this particular case, you go up here, this room is wrapped in windows. So you really feel like you're in RE. I mean, like you're up in the trees. So I think that here we just really wanted to create for them, because it's what they were looking for, that sense of serenity, that sense that there's a softness and a restfulness to the palette. So everything, and there's nothing jarring in here. It's still modern, but it's still warm. So I think just layering of textures upon one another that have a tactile quality to it just sort of feels soothing without anything being jarring. I'm sure that there are people out there that want a jarring, exciting bedroom. This client did not. But I think to get back to your question about hotels, I think most people that come to me about hotels are usually speaking about like that spa-like quality, usually in the bathrooms. And that spills over into the master suite. You just want that sense of rest, right? And sanctuary. And that's what we employed here.
Right. And Mark, what are your most favorite parts of the room in terms of how you all updated it?
I think for us, the goal is, like you've said, to create kind of a sanctuary where the clients can get away at night, have a restful sleep. And one of the big items we worked on were integrating motorized shades, in this case, into the windows. So that involved a fair amount of demolition, reconstruction to conceal those shades up above the window heads, integrate them seamlessly.
Are they in this above the?
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah, so they're built into there. So we built boxes for those. So they're all automated, come down whenever the owners like.
Mm-hmm.
We worked through some HVAC challenges in that space where the room was not conditioning properly and there was condensation on the windows. So we redid all of the ductwork, installing linear diffusers that were cut into the stone thresholds at each of the openings. So kind of a lot of behind the scenes work to create this sanctuary. We installed rigid foam in the floor itself with gypcrete to provide sound attenuation, and then basically again just created a space that the finishes were then able to be applied.
It's funny, Sharon, we often get a lot of the credit for all the magic that Pyramid does behind the scene that nobody even knows about. Click a button and all of those windows go dark.
Amazing.
Right? It's really remarkable. So I mean, these craftsmen and these builders are really the unsung heroes of these projects, to be honest.
Right. And
Thank you, Patrick. And that is where we take a lot of pride, because we view ourselves as problem solvers. I mean, Patrick and his team have done a great job creating the vision, creating the design, and our role is basically to be able to implement that, to make sure it happens seamlessly where you don't know these events are happening. And we're proud of the fact that we have many craftsmen on, that work in-house. So all of the painting work we're seeing on site, all the tile and stone work, the trim work is done really with our own in-house craftsmen. And that for us really is the most satisfying part of working on these types of projects is help realizing the vision of a talented firm like Patrick and utilizing our craftsmen to do that.
All right, that's incredible. And it's also seamless. You have no idea that there are shades hidden in those moldings. That's pretty amazing. So I have a few questions and then we'll open it up to the audience. But how do you both help a homeowner decide whether or not a home is worth renovating? And I think with this home, it was not a question, but sometimes it's not as clear-cut of an answer. Patrick, what about you?
Well, you always are sort of looking at the pros and cons, right, on both sides. Is the juice going to be worth the squeeze? Is there enough here that is worth saving, that it's worth the investment to do it? I am often, as I'm sure you are, Mark, too, asked to go walk a property to evaluate whether or not it's worth buying or not. And the answer is not always yes. There's sometimes that there's just, whether it's low ceilings or not enough light or whatever it might be, you really have to evaluate it. I mean, I think if someone is going out to put a serious investment in a project, they really should have someone looking at it from a professional standpoint to make sure that they know what they're in for in terms of the investment that it's going to take to get to where their vision is, right? There's two things that we look at with our clients. One is, what is it that's drawing them to that location? And what is it their ultimate goals and aspirations about living in that space? Those two things have to match with their budget in order for it to be a viable project. And I think with the advice of a design professional and a construction professional, that'll help guide people to get to where they need to go.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Yeah, for us, it's the same type of conversation we're having, but we're also looking to make sure that structurally the house is sound. I mean, we certainly don't want a client to buy a home and then find out that there are structural issues or mechanical type issues, things they're not expecting. So we're looking at it from that point of view to make sure that foundationally the house is sound and they are making a wise investment that we can then basically renovate or redo to meet their current lifestyles or their aspirations. But it's really starting to make sure they're making a sound investment at the start.
Mm-hmm. And Mark, once someone does go for it and decide to do a top to bottom renovation, what are some pieces of advice or mistakes to avoid that you would let our viewers know about?
I would say the biggest thing that we counsel clients on is, and made even more so now with the current pandemic or economic conditions, is really get as many of the items that you need for the renovation project selected, purchased. Our strategic plan in doing renovations is to have as many of those things in hand or ordered or know where they are before we start a project. And our goal is to limit the time of the disruption. So we like to very strategically map out a schedule, critical decision list, have all those selections, have those on hand, start the work, and then basically have everything ready to be installed. So it's kind of shortcutting that process so that you don't start a project and then find yourself subject to extended lead times or difficulties in getting products. So I think it's really making sure the client's aware of those types of things before we embark on these types of projects.
That's really good advice to eliminate or surprises along the way. What about you, Patrick?
I think it's the same. I'm going to just piggyback on Mark's comment. I think that we had a project kitchen renovation we were getting ready to start on the Eastern Shore, and with the foam shortage because of the ice storms in Texas, it was taking 8 months to get a refrigerator.
Right.
So we just delayed the project by 8 months and ordered the refrigerator, right? So I think you just have to, I think it's very important that we manage our clients' expectations outset. I mean, for example, I don't want to scare your readers, but more upholstery now, which used to be standard 6 to 8 weeks, at worst case 10 weeks, is now 30, 26 to 30. So I think people just need to be prepared for supply chain issues, and because they are real. And
They are.
I think too, when you're doing a renovation project, and God forbid you're living there, the last thing you want is disruption. So Mark's right. The more you have, sort of already in hand, you can shorten the construction window and disruption to your life.
Right.
Definitely. We are now actually, we're determining start dates based on product availability. Like Patrick said, we have a project we're looking at that we're building our schedule based on appliance availability, which is still 8 to 10 months. So again, our goal is not to renovate a home, finish everything, and then have refrigerators available. So we're kind of approaching things backwards, but working from availability and then setting a start date accordingly.
Right. All good advice. So I'm going to take some questions from our guests. Someone asked if this home is in the Baltimore area. It's actually in the DC area, which I should have mentioned. Maybe I did. And another attendee asks, what type of a flooring is in the atrium?
Yeah, that's I think I may have mentioned
Conservatory, right?
Yeah, that's the conservatory. That's a pillowed limestone. It's got a very expressed rounded edge to each of it. So I don't recommend it for high heel wearers.
Right. It definitely has that pillowed edge, so that wouldn't work well.
Also in the conservatory is the bench metal as well.
The frame of it is, yeah, it's upholstered on top, and then it is a metal leg.
And someone asked what the blue color is. I'm not sure which room that is.
I'm presuming that they're asking about the blue color in the conservatory, which was derived truly out of the patina of the bronze that was in that bas relief. That's where that came from.
We probably have that color in the magazine. We might have that color in the magazine. I'm not sure. Yes, we did change the flooring in the kitchen. Some of these questions might have been asked while we were talking. Right. Can you share more detail regarding the virtual reality experience? Is it a software tool that most designers have access to now?
Not us. Look, we deal with a lot of architects. Some of them are very sophisticated in their offerings of their rendering techniques. We outsource that to a company called High Rock that actually specifically does that for us. There's a set of goggles called Oculus that pairs up with I think I don't know what it is. I think it's an iPhone or something like that. They do the rendering in 3D, obviously, and then they upload it onto that device. The device then clicks into the goggles. You put the goggles on your face. I actually have a pair over there if you want me to go grab them, I can show you. And basically what happens is as you move your head around, you're in real time looking around the room. It's pretty remarkable. I've learned now that when I go to try it out, I have to sit down so I don't fall down, because really in augmented reality at that point.
Right.
Learn from experience, right, Patrick?
We have one guest asked who created the ironwork and what material is it? So I don't know if they might mean the stair rails.
So those were there. The stair rails were there. I cannot answer that question because I don't know who did it. The ironwork in the conservatory table was done by Gutierrez Studios here in Baltimore.
And Daniel Gossard, hi Daniel, would like to know the source of the bench in the conservatory.
I wish I could remember. I don't remember. I could see if I could find one of our designers, but they're working from home today, so I don't have it.
I can look that up in the magazine too.
Yeah.
And did Kelly's team brighten the ceiling beams in the living room?
Ask the question again, please.
Were the ceiling beams in the living room altered? Or
Yeah. I think you mean the family room.
Yes,
Uh-huh.
family room.
No,
Yeah.
those are antique timbers that I don't think we touched, did we, Mark?
I don't think we did either, no. So I think they did stay.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I think what happened though is when we did that white Venetian plaster, that matte finish white Venetian plaster, it brightened the whole room.
Mhm.
So so they were kind of the beneficiary of that.
Yes.
Someone wants to know the original kitchen flooring. Was it kind of a terracotta?
It was.
Well, I think that if anyone has any more questions, I think that should do it. The atrium bench or the conservatory bench is Jean
Jean de
Mary fabric. That's the fabric.
Yeah, nobody in my office can pronounce that company.
Yeah, Jean de Marais fabric by, yeah. But that might be just the fabric, not the bench.
No, the bench is made by Jean de Marais.
Oh, too, okay.
Yeah.
You can pronounce it.
All those years.
I want to thank you both so much. Is there anything else we didn't cover that you feel like we should?
I don't think so. I think this project really epitomizes the benefit of a collaborative effort. I think, again, our team works very well with Patrick's team. The clients were fully engaged. So I think it really shows how well a collaborative effort could work in creating a great outcome. And for us, it was very enjoyable doing the project. We're working with Patrick on the same home on a couple other smaller projects. So for us, that's the enjoyable part is kind of building these relationships with teams like Patrick and also the clients who we work with now for many years to come after the fact.
Right.
Yeah. Trust makes a great partnership.
Mm-hmm.
It really does. And I think that says a lot to clients to work, to choose their teams who have worked together, who work well together and understand each other. So that's great. And the collaboration definitely comes through.
Yeah.
Well, I want to thank you both, Mark and Patrick, for joining us this morning. This was so much fun. And hopefully I'll get to see you both in person in the coming year. But until then, have a very safe and wonderful Thanksgiving. And thanks for your time today.
Thank you, Sharon.
Well, thank you so much, Sharon. It was great getting together, and we appreciate the opportunity.
Same
Happy
here.
holidays.
Thank you so much.